Marina Bokas. Welcome to the Future of Learning. There is likely no parent or educator who doesn't realize the importance of a learning environment and its impact on learning. For a long time, however, the thought has been that learning environment is something that exists only in schools. Yet, all of the evidence tells us that home and community learning environments are just as important. How children learn is largely affected by factors outside of schools, as well as the dynamics of our times, connecting us to each other in ways that humankind has never experienced before. It is necessary to embrace families and communities as co-creators of learning environments. So how exactly can schools and families become partners? Ruthann Jaquette, the President of Michigan Parent-Teacher Association, is here today for a conversation about meaningful family-school partnerships and what can be done to achieve them in schools and communities. Ruthann, thank you so much for being here today and for your time. As you know, that parent engagement is not a new term. It's been around for a while, but a lot of people understand what family engagement is kind of differently. And the research from the Michigan and National PTA certainly supports the fact that when parents are involved in school processes, children achieve more. A lot of parents do believe that if they're engaged in anything that takes place in school, whether it's fundraising or something similar to that, it counts as a parental engagement. However, what kind of engagement do you believe really affects children's academics and help them with this?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here. And for me, and I think as we talk about it in PTA, we look at the difference between involvement versus engagement. Mm-hmm. Involvement involves, to me, it's more of a passive word. And it's like you've talked about, whether you participate in the fundraiser or you get your child up and then get them ready, that's being involved. Engagement is more of a active word, okay. The way I think about it. It's actually engaging on a lot of different fronts, as far as it may involved in being in the school, being present in the school. It may be involved what happens in helping your child with homework, mm-hmm. Making sure your child has proper nutrition and a good night's sleep to be ready for the school day, and how those things, engaging in how those things affect the child's learning environment and your child's learning in general. How you engage with your teacher, with your administrators in the school, in your local school community, making yourself knowledgeable about the different aspects and issues that affect your school individual and maybe your school district. On a larger level, and maybe education in general on a macro level. All those things are important and sort of are folded into the idea about parent engagement.
Well, as you know, in America, and not in such a distant past, there was a distinct separation between schools and communities and families. And now we're all talking about creating school-family partnerships. So how does exactly, or what does it exactly mean for schools to partner with families?
Well, partnership, by its nature, it involves some kind of equal mm-hmm. partnership, or some equality there. And I think it involves being that each side of that partnership brings something unique to the relationship and something valued to the relationship. So, and each needs to be recognized as unique and valued. And I think oftentimes that we see particularly what teachers and educators and administrators bring to that partnership. What is often missed is the uniqueness and the value of what parents and community members bring to that relationship. So I think it's really important that parents find that unique voice, and then bringing into the uniqueness that they have into that school environment. Nobody knows your child better than the parent does. Mm-hmm. And even in community, we have so many families now that we have grandparents raising children, aunts and uncles raising children, great-grandparents raising children. All of those kinds of relationships bring a different aspect into the school environment that I think can be very beneficial to not only individual children and individual classrooms, but to learning in general.
Well, you mentioned that partnership is a relationship, and from relation point of view, I guess any good relationship or healthy relationship always implies some sort of give and take. Mm-hmm. And this aspect, I honestly believe, sometimes is missing. So from this perspective, what might school administrators or educators consider giving to parents if they want to form a partnership?
Oh, I think that's an excellent question, because I agree with you that that's the piece that's often missing. And I think one of the things that they have to do is parents need access. I actually have heard that there are some schools that don't allow parent volunteers, which to me is unimaginable, certainly from our PTA value perspective. But allowing access into the schools, seeing what's going on in schools. I've sat on a lot of bond committees, sinking fund committees, and I have always been a believer that if you get people into your schools, the money follows. People understand what's going on in schools. So access is number one. Number two, I would say, is time. You have to give parents, and we recognize that there's a lot of encroachments and a lot of demands put on teachers' time and administrators' time in school, but you need to be able to give parents time. The time that they need to, if they need an explanation about, hey, what is this curriculum all about, and how does it affect my child? We can't be going and say, just trust us, you know, we know what we're doing, or let us take care of it, we're the professionals. You have to put in that time if you really want to develop that relationship. And the third, and I think the most important thing, is parents need to have a voice. They need to have a voice, a consistent voice, an authentic voice that they bring to that relationship and they bring into that partnership that's meaningful. Often I think that although we have no doubt that we have very highly qualified, very, very good educators, certainly in the schools that I get to see in my own schools, but I think when they get together, that is the sort of mindset that they have, sort of the group think that they have. And if you don't let this authentic outside voice come in, I think you miss a lot of the value that can be brought in through parent and community relationships.
Well, absolutely. And on that subject that you're talking about, the voice, as human being, I suppose we are always thinking about developing, I guess, personal liking with somebody else. And when we interact with administrators, or whether it's parents, it doesn't really matter who, our relationships are always built on being nice to each other. However, a partnership is a distinctly collegial relationship. So from this perspective, how can parents and educators and administrators be colleagues?
Well, and that's also a very good question, because I think interesting, the other aspect to a partnership is there's often also tension. And tension, you know, some conflict and tension can be actually good. I think you can get a better work product, but there is some tension there. And we have this feeling that we don't ever want to have any conflict. We don't ever want to have any tension. And I think sometimes you need that tension there. What we have lost, though, so much in so many of our, not just school relationships, but community, is a sense of civility. We have so much conflict driven by you know, whatever the political climate is, and I'm sure that could be a whole nother discussion. But that there's so much tension there that we've lost some of the civility and being able to actually communicate with each other, and a mutual respect. I think we don't always respect teachers and administrators for the great wealth of information and professionalism that they bring. And school and administrators and teachers don't always respect parents for what they bring to that relationship. And if we need this coming together of recognizing those unique parts and those unique valued pieces that each person brings, each of those groups bring to that relationship, before we can have really truly successful partnerships.
Well, it's also, of course, right now been proven many times that when parents and communities really get involved with schools, they really help schools to improve education, especially maybe where there is not so many opportunities to start with. But to do this, they really need to be part of a decision-making process, which is also the collegial part of it, and partnership, talking about equal. That means you need to participate in it. And I believe it's more than in advisory capacity, as there's a lot of advisory going on, but not enough decision-making. So from decision-making standpoint, how can schools let parents participate exactly in decision-making process?
Well, particularly, I think we talk a lot when we talk about curriculum for kids that needs to be rigorous and it needs to be relevant. And I think when we look at parent relationships, we need to look at that same perspective. It needs to be relevant, and it needs to be regular, and it needs to be rigorous. We need to, if we're having committees, so often we find that schools definitely, they want to be able to say they have parental involvement. They want to say they have community involvement. But many times, and not exclusively in all schools, but many times it's lip service. So if you need to include parents at times that they can be there, accommodating for their schedules and making whole decisions that really take those parts into consideration, so that and I think that most people would agree, if you're looking at the business community, the military, any of those other kind of aspects that come out, that when you bring so many parts of a whole together, you get a better product when you're done.
Sure,
and I think
definitely.
if we tend not to do that in education.
Yeah.
That we need to have can we run our schools like businesses? Probably not so much, but does it mean that we can't take some of the aspects of how businesses operate, how the military operates, how nonprofits operate, and bring all those together and to get the best product we can for our kids? Absolutely, I think we can do that. Take some give and take. It's a little scary. People have to give up their power, and I think that's maybe probably the biggest point. It's very difficult for people to give up the power that they have, but in sharing that power with a variety of aspects, I think that will give us the best overall
It's probably
outcome.
another thing is a control.
Absolutely.
That comes with power. All right, well, thank you so very much for being here again, for your insights, and it was great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
As schools adapt into the dynamics and requirements of our times, there is no way that they could scale and sustain any effective change effort without the full engagement of families and community members. As Karen Mapp, a family engagement expert from Harvard Graduate School of Education, stated, true partnership requires educators to believe that families and the communities are rich with the human and social capital that schools need for effective education. Her advice is that we see our families and community members as co-creators and co-producers of the excellent schools and learning opportunities that we want for all of our students.